Another possible clincher at home for the Cats, but it results in a shutout. The Canes snapped their 15-game Eastern Conference final losing streak, and the Panthers will now have to try to clinch on the road.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, May 27th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12 and on Blue Sky at MondoMan12 as well. That is Jackson Holzer, South Florida native and the host of Locked On Syracuse. You can follow him at JacksonH_52 and at LO_Syracuse. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So the Florida Panthers lose to the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 4 by a final score of 3-0. The Carolina Hurricanes get 2 empty net goals at the end. The Panthers obviously getting shut out. Sergei Bobrovsky was standing on his head in the first period. The Carolina Hurricanes did score on a breakaway opportunity, and then the Panthers, with some desperation at the end, with some line switches, putting Brad Marchand on the top line. It was Freddie Anderson standing on his head in the third period, but it ultimately resulted in a loss for the Panthers, and now it's still a 3-1 series lead. And Jackson, my biggest takeaway for the Panthers here is just the amount of times that when they did go to the middle of the ice, there was just so many times where the plays were just broken up, and just sometimes when they did get those chances in the low slot, it was just a lot of missed nets. And the Panthers, I even thought, despite losing this, they did a decent job as far as separating the puck in the offensive zone when they did try to get their chances on Freddie Anderson.
I just thought they were flat all game. I thought they had a couple of opportunities. I mean, Nate Schmidt hits the post in the second period and it was a point shot, so it was through a screen. Carter Verhaeghe had a 2-on-1 that was denied early. I think Freddie Anderson got a piece of it. Kulikov had a 2-on-1 after he took a dumb penalty, but he got out of the box in the third period and he had a chance and nearly tied the game. And other than those three chances, Armando, I didn't really think that Florida did all that much on offense. And I know people kind of get turned off by analytics, but I like to look at them to see if they match what my eyes are telling me. And my eyes were telling me the whole game that, man, I don't think Florida's generating a whole lot. Like, where are their chances? Where is it like, oh, we're making Freddie Anderson's life difficult here? Like, what a huge shutout this is for him. And I'm not trying to discredit him, but I'm just pointing out that they match up the eye test. You already hit the nail on the head here, because I'm looking at Money Puck right now. Florida did not have a single shot attempt in Carolina's house. And for those that don't understand what I'm saying, it's basically that 5-foot area around the net. So basically the slot. Florida didn't have any chances in there. I mean, that's where you score goals. Mm-hmm. They didn't get anything. And they had a couple of opportunities where you thought they would have a chance, and then Barkov just couldn't get a stick on it or something like that. Or he would try to make that extra move to the backhand, or Lundell gets hooked on a breakaway, so that denies a chance there, which should have been a penalty shot, I might add. They were just flat, and credit to Carolina for playing a great game.
Yeah. Ultimately, the Panthers did go on the power play with Nikishin committing that penalty, but scoring chances for 24-11 in favor of Carolina. Expected goals percentage. Oh, this one's bad. 21% for the Florida Panthers in this one. So it truly matched when it came to this game. And the amount of times where I was sitting in the press box and then there was a breakup, it was I kept saying just a name, Jacob Slavin. Another great play, Jacob Slavin. There was one time where Carter Verhaeghe was trying to go up the wing and then try to skate around him, use his edge work, and then trying to bring it to his forehand. And obviously he's a left-handed shot going to the right wing, and then separating the puck. He doesn't even get a shot on net for the Panthers there. So it was just the amount of times that Jacob Slavin was just making so many stops for the Carolina Hurricanes. And you mentioned all the breakaway opportunities, especially. And Kulikov had a great opportunity, but there was just no passing lane for the trailer. All those back checkers were back there. So I didn't mind that shot from Kulikov coming out of the box for the Panthers there. But I mean, missed opportunities as well, because the Nate Schmidt gets draws a penalty, and then he takes a retaliatory penalty, which
that was dumb.
Doesn't give the Panthers an opportunity to go up on the power play. But then there was one that was out of the Panthers' control where Tkachuk draws one, and then the trailing referee that was on the blue line, which was Garrett Rank, he calls the penalty, but Jean Hebert, the one near the goal line, calls the other one. So it's two different ones seeing two different things. And I had the broadcast in my ear while watching the game on the ice, and apparently what the broadcast said was they were not a fan of there was one hip check that Dmitry Orlov had on Matthew Tkachuk, that they thought that he might have embellished. So that felt like kind of a makeup call for that penalty that Tkachuk ultimately was called for embellishment. That's the second time that's happened this postseason.
So I want to comment on that. Why didn't you just call it the first time? If you thought he embellished the first time, then call it. And I honestly, I understand why the rule is in place. The rule is in place because you don't want this to turn into soccer where you have players flopping all the time, or you turn it like into the NBA and players are flopping. I understand that. You don't want that in the game. You need to change how it's called. Mm-hmm. You cannot call embellishment for something that is a penalty. How are you supposed to judge how a player is supposed to react to a penalty? He gets clearly tackled. It's a hook. It's a slash. It's like multiple penalties in one. It was committed by Jordan Staal. And if you're watching the broadcast, you could see his face. He's like, crap. I know I just committed a penalty. I'm going to the box. I very clearly took down Matthew Tkachuk. And of course, I'm not blaming the refs here. I just want to point out that embellishment doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. The way that they call it does not make what is he supposed to do? What was the embellishment what was the embellishment that they called earlier in the playoffs? It was like on a trip.
Erod for getting.
Oh yeah, right. Erod smashing his face against the boards, and I'm like, okay, ref. I'd like to. I played hockey too. Okay, let's cross check you in the back, and let's see how you're supposed to react to it. Let's find the normal human reaction to getting cross checked in the back here, because you're not really embellishing in that situation. Same thing with Matthew Tkachuk. What? It's a penalty. So there's no embellishment. And if you're wanting to say, it's a makeup call, well, then you should have called it the first time. Mm-hmm. Call it when it actually is embellishment. Then we don't have a problem here.
Yeah. And I rather that just be a no call, instead of, if you're not going to call the hooking to begin with, if you're going to do the embellishment, just let the play go and then just move on. Even if the crowd groans a little bit and says, Matthew Tkachuk got hooked there.
Well, there was a play where Freddie Anderson, I think he tripped Barkov, but goalies kind of have immunity.
Yeah,
that's what I like to tell people. Goalies, if you stay near them, they can do whatever they want, and you kind of just have to accept it.
Hey, Kochekov didn't last game after that trip on Evan Rodriguez.
That was a little too much.
Yeah, that was.
It has to be like around the crease area. If it's like the side of the net and the guy is clearly not going towards you, then then they'll call it.
No doubt. And even the Panthers, even then they had a good chance after the goal by Jankowski was called offside. But my goodness, how quick that was, and the fact that a little excited by Eric Robinson to just get a good half foot to a foot behind the blue line to start the third period, and then you think the game is over and then the Panthers still give themselves a chance. Unfortunately, a bad turnover by Matthew Tkachuk trying to do a backhand pass leads to the back of the net, and then the Panthers try again, and then Jordan Staal walks Seth Jones on that one to score into the empty net, and then it ends up 3-0, but the game was a lot closer than the final score indicated. The Carolina Hurricanes play a basically perfect game, and the Panthers still had a chance in this one. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss our 3 duds of the game and the moment where we knew the game was lost. We're going to discuss that more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by wonderful pistachios. And are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And plus, I love the no shells variety. It's my perfect grab and go snack for busy days whether I'm stacking my desk, a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. If you love cracking every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. And for myself personally as well, sometimes I'm at a traffic light and I have the pistachios in a cup holder. And the thing is, you don't need to make a pit stop. It's just very convenient. And that's what I love about Wonderful Pistachios. So get snacking and cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Segment number 2 here on this Tuesday, May 27th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here with Jackson Holzer, South Florida native and the host of Locked On Syracuse here on the show. Now we are going to discuss our 3 duds of the game and the moment where we knew the game was lost. So number 3 dud, for the Panthers. I'm going to go with Matthew Tkachuk. Inside presence continues to be an issue, which we know that clearly there is something there still from the injury back from 4 Nations. And I'm really not understanding the double shifting on the power play when he's just not making himself noticeable there. Number 2 dud for me, Dmitry Kulikov, the bad pinch that resulted in that stretch pass from Nikishin to Logan Stankovan right before beating Sergei Bobrovsky bar down for that goal, which you're very encouraged if you're the Florida Panthers, where that was the only goal at 5-on-5 that they scored there on a breakaway, which we've seen the Panthers consistently fix whenever they're tight in the neutral zone. Number 1's dud for me, and we spoke about this. Pre-recording that I have a different one because honestly, there was a lot of Panthers that didn't really have their best game. But I'm going to go with an assistant coach, Jamie Kompon. I know that they're down multiple guys. There was no AJ Greer. There was no Nico Mikkola in this one. So Kulikov was playing a spot up. Uvis Balinskis was playing on the third pair, which Uvis Balinskis had a great play on the penalty kill, which he forced it out of the right on the blue line and then killed the penalty right there, and even got that second chance opportunity after Nate Schmidt hit the post, the thing that you mentioned earlier. But just the personnel on the power play where you have guys who do the same thing in Evan Rodriguez and Aaron Ekblad from what they do from the left flank, and just playing Evan Rodriguez in that bumper position, it's just not doing it for me. I know it's a right-handed shot versus if you were to have Bennett, because Matthew Tkachuk is mostly positioned on the left side of the goal line versus the right, so it's a lot easier to get a pass into the slot. But I just and even Evan Rodriguez had a great setup to Aaron Ekblad, which he was very hesitant on shooting, which there was a stick already there, and the amount of times we saw it hit the net above. So I just want to see a little bit of changes there if Sam Reinhart in fact cannot play in Game 5. So your 3 duds.
So I want to preface this by saying the last 2 losses for the Panthers in the playoffs have been very similar. Because if you recall, the last loss in the playoffs was Game 6 against Toronto. And there's 2 very common themes. 2, I guess 3. So they got shut out. They didn't generate a whole lot on offense in either one of those games. And actually this game against Carolina was worse with the expected goals by a landslide, which I was kind of surprised by because both were pretty bad games. And the other commonality between those 2 games is this, and it's not often you get to say it, but even in a loss, nobody played well. Like not a single stater. I think Bob actually played a pretty good game, and don't blame him on the goal. It was a great shot, and you know what? He wasn't going to bail the team out forever because it didn't look like they were going to score. And you kind of have to score to win, right? So nobody really played well. Tkachuk was awful. Awful.
Mhm.
I know we keep on saying, oh, he's hurt, he's this, he's that. He doesn't play a fast game to begin with. Like, how hurt?
Correct.
I know he's hurt. How hurt is he actually?
Mhm.
We've seen him in this series, and he's looked just fine.
Mhm.
He was great in the other game, but now all of a sudden he's injured again. I don't really – he just had an off night. It happens.
Yeah.
So he's one of my duds for sure. I mean, that turnover that led to the empty net. I mean, I was actually watching with my dad, Armando, and he goes to me at one point, has he made a successful pass all game? Like, has he put it on someone's stick?
No.
And I was like, that's a great point. He really just hasn't made a pass. Like it hasn't connected one time. Like, you would see them try to enter the zone on the power play, and he just flings it into an area, and there's nobody there. Now, is it on him? Is it on the other players? I don't know.
Yeah.
My other dud is Barkov. I think Barkov had a couple of chances that were right in front of the net where he just wasn't quick enough. Normally, he's very quick, very decisive, but there were a couple moments where he's trying to get to his backhand, and you're giving Carolina too much time to poke the puck off your stick. They were playing a really good game. Yeah. And you have to recognize that when they're playing well, they kind of suffocate you. They're very similar to the Panthers. So you got to be quick. Just if you're in front of the net and you have a chance to shoot, just shoot the puck. Guy's trying to go to his backhand. I mean, trying to be too fancy. Like, all right, man, just shoot it. You're going against Freddie Anderson. You're probably going to score. So Barkov is definitely a dud. And that's kind of concerning when two of your best players are duds in the game. And I guess I don't even know who to give it a number 3. I don't know who my other dud is because I think everyone had a bad game to begin with. Who was the lowest on the expected goals? Evan Rodriguez. So we'll give it to him.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty soft, to be honest, in the last game.
The Corsi percentage, Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad were also pretty bad there.
Nobody played well, and that doesn't usually happen. Most of the time, even in losses, you can look back and say, oh, that guy had a good game. That guy played really well. Remember the Game 5 loss against the Oilers last year in the Cup? I remember thinking after that game, as depressed as I was, that this series was going 7 now because they weren't going to win Game 6. But Matthew Tkachuk had an excellent game. He almost willed that team to the Stanley Cup in Game 5.
Prevented an empty net.
He prevented the empty net before. You can have players play well even in losses, and in the last 2 losses, nobody has played well. I just find that really strange. The whole team was just down.
Yeah, and like you said, credit to Sergei Bobrovsky because even before the Carolina Hurricanes scored, I still felt like that a lot of their shots were coming from the outside. They were driving up the wing, and Sergei Bobrovsky was making himself big, taking away those shot angles, and then the rebound controls. He struggled a little bit of that in Game 3, but it wasn't really that much of the case in Game 4. So I thought that the rebound control for Sergei Bobrovsky was great.
There was another positive with the game. I like the penalty kill.
Yeah,
I think the penalty kill was really strong. They had that moment in the third period where Kulikov took that really dumb penalty. It was very early. And I thought in that moment, this could be one of those, Carolina gets on the board again here and this game's over because they're not going to get 2 goals in the third period to come back. And it was an excellent kill, and they got the best chance out of it at the end of the penalty kill when Kulikov comes out of the box. So I think there are a couple, 2 positives. Bob was good. He kept you in it. And the penalty kill was strong. Other than that, there wasn't really a whole lot to talk about as far as positives for the game, I should say.
Yeah. And you're not gonna, and it's funny because the push for this game, for Game 4, was very similar to the Carolina Hurricanes Game 2 in 2023, where it was that early push, but the Panthers were able to still keep things afloat, right? And that was the same game where Barkov had his between the legs shot on Antti Ranta for one of the goals in that game, which the Panthers still ended up winning for that second Tkachuk overtime winner. But it was very reminiscent of just the dominance that they had, like right at the beginning of the game. Andrei Svechnikov had his first shot in 6 periods in the first. So, and that was a big push that line for the Carolina Hurricanes as far as getting chances on net and winning their 50-50 battles as well for for them. So that's another thing that was okay. You knew that you couldn't take them away for 4 straight games, even if the Panthers on paper do have the better talent right then and there. So the moment where I knew the game was lost for me was that very last 4th and final power play. Right before the TV timeout, the Panthers were leading the shot advantage 7-2. Okay, the Panthers were pushing. They're not playing their best game, but they still have a chance to win. After that, fourth one for the Panthers, and then the fact that they don't score, which the Carolina Hurricanes did eventually score on those 2 empty netters. That was the high stick from Logan Stankovan on Eetu Luostarinen.
Yep.
That was just where I was saying it's not their night.
Yep. So it's funny. I have two different possibilities. I texted my friends before the game. I always try to predict what's going to happen, and I've actually gotten a very good read on this series about what's going to happen. Because I just had I don't know, sometimes I'm just really right. I have to give myself a pat on the back. I'm going into this game, and I'm thinking, I think tonight is the night where the Panthers are going to rip the soul out of the Hurricanes. This is not going to be another 5-2 blowout win. I was thinking the Panthers are winning this game 2-1 in double overtime. And Carolina is going to outplay them for the entirety of the game. So at the end of the second period, I'm trying to lean in on my prediction that this was already built in. I know it. This is what's built in. This is what's going to happen. They're going to tie it up in some weird fashion, and they're going to somehow win this game in overtime, and Carolina's going to freak out. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't think the Panthers are going to score a goal. They're just too off. They have an on-off switch, and the switch had been off the entirety of the first 2 periods. I'm like, I don't see a sign where we're going to score, so we're already down 1-0. I think we're going to lose this game. And then the empty netter happens. So once Carolina goes up 2-0 with the empty netter, I know the broadcast, if you're watching, was like, oh, there's still a lot of time. There's 2:11 left. And I'm like, Eddie Olczyk, man. Have you watched the Panthers all night? Have you seen them connect a pass in the offensive zone one time? You think they're going to now score 2 goals?
Unless it's a fluke.
2.
So.
I mean, like, maybe they get that 1 goal just to, like, say they didn't get shut out. You think they're going to score 2 with even no chance. So, yeah, I'm struggling either at the end of the second period or the empty netter.
Yeah, both of them are extremely valid. And for the Panthers, they like we said, they still had a chance and even got a lifeline with that challenge to reverse it. And hey, the Carolina Hurricanes brought it, and they earned the win. And they were a desperate bunch, and the Panthers did not match their desperation there. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to get a little bit of a vibe check from ourselves and discuss the vibe check from the team after the game. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Tuesday, May 27th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here with Jackson Holzer, South Florida native and the host of Locked On Syracuse, here on the show to break down this Panthers 3-0 loss against the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Final. So, Jackson, the Carolina Hurricanes snapped their 15-game Eastern Conference Final losing streak. So, yes, Rod Brindamore, you did not get swept. And also 1-15. Why does that sound so familiar? Maybe because the Miami Dolphins, the 2007 Miami Dolphins, went 1-15. So that's the very first thing I thought of when I hear that record. But I'm going to let you go first on this one, and we're just going to describe it in one word. What's your vibe check after the Panthers lost this game and now have to go on the road again to possibly clinch another series away from home?
Annoyed.
Okay.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried one bit. I'm not even mad or disappointed. I'm just kind of annoyed that they had this great chance, to close it out, sweep them, get some guys healthy for the Stanley Cup. You're going to have a lot of days off. And I know people are going to say, oh, you don't want the days off. You don't want that. Remember what happened a couple of years ago, guys. A couple of years ago, they had Grigory Denisenko, Zach Velpe, and Casey Fitzgerald dressing in the Stanley Cup. They weren't beating Vegas if they had 2 days off or 8 days off. That team was nowhere. That team was not even close. And Colin White, I don't know how. I'm thinking about it now. How did that team even go to the Stanley Cup? Bob Tkachuk and the power. Bob Tkachuk and the power of friendship, really. Yeah. Just annoyed. I mean, it is what it is. They're not going to be perfect. They're going to lose games. They've had some guys injured, but that's not really an excuse when the previous game you had guys injured and won 6-2.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little annoyed. But am I worried about the rest of the series? No, not at all. They're probably going to win it in 5.
Yeah, the word that I would describe is unbothered. Is the way that I would just get my own type of vibe check when it comes to this, because I just think that it's hard to win 4 in a row. You're gonna get the opposition's best. I asked Sergei Bobrovsky after the game how he felt. Is it very encouraging, the fact that it was still 1-0 right before those 2 empty netters? And he also referenced back to the last game in Game 3 where it was tied, and then the Panthers just went on those 5 goals, and then you create your own garbage time. And I mean, multiple times in this series we've seen the Panthers have that third period, that explosion, once in the first period, two other times in the third. But the outside of this one, outside of Game 4, there was only one period where the Carolina Hurricanes outscored the Panthers in a period for the first 3 games of the series. So this was your one, and things tend to average out throughout a series. So I just think that still, with all that said, and the fact that the Panthers, like we mentioned earlier, 21% expected goals, gave them still had a chance to win. So even with that, I'm waiting to see the Panthers play their best game again, which we saw in the first 3. And here's the thing: the vibe check that I got from Paul Maurice spoke about so many things. Excited about the learning opportunity, because they're 3-6.
He makes it sound like they just planted this loss. Like they just were just like, we're gonna lose this game and that's okay. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about it, but it's just kind of annoying. Like, why couldn't you just win this game and just be done with this series? Now we have to drag our butts back to Carolina. Who wants to do that?
Yeah, and listen, we've seen this team go 3-0 multiple times, even including twice last year against Tampa and then Edmonton. You saw the jokes coming out in the beginning when they would lose a potential clincher, and then the jokes stopped later on in that, especially in Game 6 and 7, where they just got absolutely manhandled, especially in Game 6. But even joking around in this one, saying about the 2 empty Bobrovsky's performance, saying, "Oh yeah, I liked how he performed, except for the last 2 goals where he didn't close the gap." And then that was just, once again, another hysterical quote that Paul Maurice put out there. But also, it's not just that. But then when the PR person, which in the conference final and the Stanley Cup final, it's mostly the NHL PR taking over the team PR. So he was thanking Paul Maurice, and then he was like, "Thank you." So vibes aren't bad for the Florida Panthers here.
No, and why would they? I mean, they lost a game. I think they all acknowledge that they didn't play well.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't their first rodeo, so I'm not expecting that they're going to be panicking or anything like that. They know they didn't play well. They had an off game, and you can afford. You would like to think that you can afford an off game when you're up 3-0 in a series.
Yeah.
Now, if you lose Game 5, well, then we got a little bit of a discussion here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have full confidence that, yeah, it was an annoying loss, and I'm annoyed that there is a game 5, but I have full confidence they're going to win it. That they'll go back into Carolina. They'll play a much cleaner game. They'll be tighter. They'll get some slot chances, hopefully, in that game. Maybe they get a couple of guys back healthy. We'll see how day-to-day some of these guys truly are. And they'll win, right? Eventually, Armando, they're going to win the series. Like they're going. You just look top to bottom at these teams, and eventually they're going to win it. But you'd like to do it as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah,
and you don't want to give that team belief. Don't give them belief.
No doubt.
Just get rid of them.
And maybe I was looking ahead a little bit too much in this one, thinking that the Spears were just snatched so much from Carolina. But hey, they're in the conference final for a reason. Even if the talent discrepancy, in my opinion, is way higher for the Panthers, and it's just so wide. But I was just thinking that the fact that the Western Conference Final is at least going to 5 games, I was just thinking, oh look, possible off day Wednesday. There's going to be a game. There's going to be a game 5 on a Thursday for Edmonton Dallas, and then if Dallas finds a way to win game 4 on the road, they extend it all the way to Saturday. And yeah, I fully agree with you about the possible week off for the Panthers. The fact, let's not forget, Nico Sturm was reinserted into the lineup and was playing on the wing. There's still when healthy, Jesper Boquist is not in the lineup, and then you could still reinsert him on the 4th line. So they still have a complete 5th line, which, by the way, I got to give credit to Tomas Nosek and Jonah Gadjevich. At 5-on-5, they don't have a single goal against. And analytically, the Corsi, they were still over 50% in this one. Yeah, you don't want your 4th line to be the best line when it comes to the Corsi percentage, but still, that's still a very encouraging sign that they're not shooting themselves in the foot over this playoff run.
I'm kind of surprised that they were above 50%. I don't know how that's possible. So I guess that's one of those analytics where it just doesn't match. But I mean, you're right. They have 5 lines. So even if a guy gets hurt, they have an NHL replacement. And that is the difference between the time when they played Carolina a couple years ago and the time they're playing Carolina now. A couple years ago, they didn't. Eetu Luostarinen broke his leg in game 4, so he didn't play in the Stanley Cup. Yeah. They didn't have a replacement for Eetu Luostarinen. This year, I don't wish injury upon anyone, but you have Mackie Samostevich, who's still not in the lineup here. Which maybe that's something that they might consider for game 5 if Reinhart can't go again. Maybe you give Mackie Samostevich a try because you're looking for more offense, maybe.
Maybe. Could be useful on the power play for the Panthers, because at home they just can't figure out how to score.
I don't know what it is. It's like maybe
they can.
Maybe it's what the Toronto fans are saying about the pressure about playing on home ice. I guess they play much better on the road for whatever reason, even though it defies all logic that you can't score a power play goal at home.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if they continue putting that Marchand on the top line along with Alexander Barkov and Evan Rodriguez. But that line was pinned in their own end quite a bit. So
yeah, so I wouldn't start game 5 that way. I think you got to stick with Lundell, Luostarinen, and Marchand as your line 3 still, and hope that your line 1 is giving you more production. I mean, ideally, you get Sam Reinhart back.
Yeah, hopefully.
Ideally, which I honestly think is, I don't know. Is it? You probably know better than I do, but I think it's a coin flip if he plays in game 5.
Yeah, Paul Maurice likes to give every player at least one skate before they put him back in the lineup, but that skate might not come until morning skate of game 5. So
he did not suffer a serious injury. Because if he did, thank goodness. Because if he did, he wouldn't be moving around the way he is without getting surgery or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't play on a torn ligament or anything like that. You just can't. You can maybe play on a broken bone, a torn ligament. You can't move.
Yeah.
You can't move laterally. So I'm glad that he seems to be okay and he'll eventually come back, but I don't know if that's going to be game 5.
Yeah. We'll see. The Panthers will have an optional practice at 11 a.m. at the Baptist Health Iceplex right before traveling to Raleigh, and then Game 5 will be on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. right on TNT. Jackson, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the show. If you guys want to follow him online, you can follow him on X at JacksonH_52. You can follow all of his work as well at Locked On Syracuse, and of course, more guest appearances here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast in the future. So, Jackson, thank you so much, and I will see you soon, my friend.
Thank you, Armando. See you soon.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jackson Holzer, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.